on the Weekly Objective from the Ayn Rand Center UK. I'm Jonathan Hoenig, coming to you not from jolly old England, from Chicago, Illinois, another major center of intellectual thought and certainly objectivist thought. And that's what we are. We're a community of objectivists from all over the world, not just in England, but in fact, all throughout Europe, having live events, having daily conversations, having online feuds and interviews with new authors, and of course, our mainstay show, if you will, the Daily Objective. And we're happy to bring you another program today, especially happy for all the supporters of the show. I already see Marilyn, Joey Spinoza, Enric Teller, Wes Stewart, Free Trade, all kind of hitting us up in the super chat, and a lot of new folks coming in here as well. So we really appreciate all those donations. You're going straight to Rosie Ginsburg, who's helping keeping all this discussion going live. You've landed on what is, I think, with no uncertain terms, you can say the largest producer of objectivist-related content in the world, certainly on a weekly basis. We're bringing you hours and hours of not just mindless objectivist diatribes, but fresh content from people like Harry Binswanger, Don Watkins, James Valiant, Nikos Sapirokopoulos, Rucka Ali. It's all coming to you free of charge. So we appreciate, treat us like a trader, don't be a freeloader, and hit us up in the super chat for anywhere from 50 pence. Do they even make any pence anymore? Or maybe pence has been run out of town. We do have a really exciting, I think, program coming to you today. Something that you could certainly say is ripped from the headlines, but I think very important. Oftentimes people say, well, objectivism, especially when it comes to foreign policy, that was years ago. What does that have anything to do with what we're dealing with today? And what you so often find when you even start studying Ms. Rand's work, start studying Dr. Peikoff, is that they were truly prophetic, not in a mystical sort of way, but their knowledge of how philosophy moves the culture. So today we're going to talk about a country that seems to be always in the news, and I think, frankly, always in the news for the wrong reasons. And I always want to say, this is here at the Ayn Rand Center UK. We do not speak for objectivism. We're students of objectivism, hopefully connecting pieces of Ms. Rand's work and Dr. Peikoff's work to some contemporary and modern day issues, and fostering discussion and fostering further reading of objectivism and knowledge of Ms. Rand's works around the world. You might have seen this story. This was kind of really was big this past month, a story about Saudi Arabia, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, unveiling a huge proposal for what they're describing as the biggest city in history, a 100-mile-long metropolis for 9 million people. And if you can see, they're calling it the Line. It is a completely narrow, long, mirrored so-called skyscraper. Here's some proposed indoor, what it's going to look like to live inside this futuristic wonderland. I thought it looked like a real depressing mall, but this is Saudi Arabia's view of the future. You've got the requisite DJs there in the lower right-hand corner. I guess you always need to have a DJ, but it's a pretty outrageous, futuristic, dystopian, I think in a pretty unhappy way, vision of the future. And this is what Saudi Arabia is promising. It's, as we said, a 106-mile-long vertical city. Its director is promising that the Line will revolutionize our current way of life. That is what they are proposing for Saudi Arabia. Set to house 9 million people, it will be visible from space. And you heard it here first on the Daily Objective. It will never happen. This will never, ever happen. And when I saw this vision of this futuristic city and technological advanced city, and it made me think right away of something that Ms. Rand, I believe, answered. Atlas Shrugged had always been compared, and people had seen similarities between Atlas Shrugged and the George Orwell's 1984. And Dr. Peikoff was asked what Ms. Rand thought of 1984. This was Dr. Peikoff's answer, quoting from Dr. Peikoff. She disliked and disapproved of Orwell's 1984, not because Orwell was a socialist, but because of the power he gives to evil, the metaphysical power. He does not present it simply as a totalitarian, corrupt state, but as a mighty totalitarian state, precisely because it's ruled by power and the minds of all the individuals are crushed. The evidence is that it's such a highly technologically developed society. What Rand wanted to know is, where did this technology come from? Who runs it? And what sustains it in the society that he presents, where all minds and thought are crushed. What a fascinating perspective on Orwell's 1984 from Miss Rand vis-a-vis Dr. Peikoff, and what a real insightful understanding of what creates wealth and the power of man's mind and how it will not work under force. And that's why for me at least, when I saw that Saudi Arabia's plan for this futuristic city, you think, it made me think exactly as Ms. Rand said, who is going to build it? I mean, Saudi Arabia, for as much, I think, dignity as unfortunately the West gives them, is not a particularly wealthy country. This is some data from Business Insider. Pennsylvania has a larger annual GDP than the entire nation of Saudi Arabia. In fact, here in the US, despite all that wealth, supposed natural wealth that Saudi Arabia has, the US per capita income still more than doubles that of Saudi Arabia. I think it's not because we have less natural resources than we have. That's actually never what defines and kind of determines the amount of wealth that any country or really individual have. It's how much freedom they have. And if you look at Saudi Arabia, this is a country that the 2022 Index of Economic Freedom ranked on par with Ghana, El Salvador, Niger, Djibouti in terms of how free they are. And that's a real scarlet letter, I think, in my book, and I think in most objectivist book. I mean, to be unfree, to sanction a country that is unfree, I think is to sanction evil. To keep people in chains is evil. To deny people their individual rights is evil. Unfree countries are evil. And it's only allowed to exist, again, this is quoting from Miss Rand now from Atlas Shrugged, evil, not value, is an absence and a negation. Evil is impotent and has no power, but that which we let it extort from us. And that is what I think of when I think of Saudi Arabia. This is a country that is not particularly wealthy, even despite all of its, and it's given sanction after sanction after sanction over again from Americans. And people think that the Middle East is a threat. They see Saudi Arabia as this major global power. It is not. And I think that we have, as the West, and certainly as America, have let it extort it from us for too long. And I think we need to start by calling out Saudi Arabia for really what it is well, let's see. Let's first take a look at how American presidents have treated Saudi Arabia. I mean, Biden said he would not sit with MBS. He did. A month later, he in fact approved multi-billion-dollar arms sales to Saudi Arabia. Trump said that the Saudi crown prince is a friend of mine. He praised him. He really didn't press much into Khashoggi's killing. He said the Saudi crown prince is doing a spectacular job. I'd say of violating the rights of his people. But this isn't unusual. I mean, here's Reagan sitting with the Saudi king, Bush Sr. sitting with the Saudi king, here's Clinton sitting with the Saudi king, Bush Jr. sitting with the Saudi king, Obama laughing up with the Saudi king. I mean, this is, and when I see these pictures of men, Western men with presumably good values and respect of individual rights, sitting and shaking hands and breaking bread with evil dictators, I can't help but think, and I'm not kind of pulling the old Hitler card, but think of this very famous meeting with Adolf Hitler and Neville Chamberlain. September 30th, 1938, Chamberlain made the famous so-called peace for our time deal with Hitler. And by sanctioning evil, not calling it out, he, I believe, exacerbated Hitler's ability to spread. And that's my belief of what we do with countries like Saudi Arabia, which is first on my list because it presents itself as this, this first world modern, and this whole notion of we've changed now, we're a new modern kingdom. But let's look now and see if there's any difference between Nazi Germany, if you will, maybe say the death camps, but let's just say the philosophy and the political system, and modern Saudi Arabia. I have to joke when I see these two men, here's Adolf Hitler and I believe the Saudi king, I can only think of what I remember Miss Rand's feeling, not even about politics in this sense, but about men with facial hair. And it's a funny aesthetic kind of, I don't think, certainly not objectivism, but Dr. Peikoff, if you ever go, I hope you go check out his podcast on his website, peikoff.com. He tells a very funny anecdote about Miss Rand's view of men with facial hair, and that's on his website as well. Miss Rand, now from from the virtue of selfishness. There are 4 characteristics which brand a country unmistakably as a dictatorship: one-party rule, executions without trial or with a mock trial for political offenses, the nationalization or expropriation of private property, and censorship. A country guilty of these outrages forfeits any moral prerogatives, any claim to national rights or sovereignty, and becomes an outlaw. That is from Miss Rand, from Virtue of Selfishness. And this is modern day Saudi Arabia, one-party rule. I mean, check it off. The government of Saudi Arabia has a monarch, King Solomon. There's no other political parties permitted. In fact, Saudi Arabia was listed as the 7th most authoritative regime back in 2010. My sense is it hasn't improved a lot since then. I mean, would you want to go sit down and have dinner with one of the leaders of the 7th most authoritative regime in the world? So why do we allow our leaders to do that? Why do we allow them to be seen in public with these people, these authoritative monsters, mystical monsters? What about executions without trial or with a mock trial? Well, they've got that so-called chop chop square in Saudi Arabia where public executions take place regularly. We in fact covered it on the What's Behind the Facade episode of the Daily Objective. So definitely bookmark that and go back and check that out as well. But I mean, Saudi Arabia is known for executions, known for political executions, mass executions, public executions, executions of children. In fact, just back earlier this year, they reconvicted someone who committed a crime when he was a child to death. This is I don't know, what's below third world? Is there a fourth world? And then of course the whole Khashoggi incident, which was, barbaric on, I mean, you might not know the Al Capone reference, who was a mobster who chopped people up in Chicago in the turn of the century, but this is on that level of just no regard for human body qua human body, with the Khashoggi incident, a few years prior. That was Saudi Arabia at work, modern day Saudi Arabia. What about the nationalization or expropriation of private property? Again, quoting from Miss Rand, basically defining what she said, an outlaw. What defines an outlaw? Well, people marvel at Saudi Arabia's oil wealth, but what a lot of people don't know, in fact, what I learned from Dr. Peikoff, is that wealth was originally created by Western intelligence, Western knowledge, Western capital. Aramco now, which is the big Saudi oil company in quotes, because it's owned by the states. So where does the state stop and the company begin? It's the same thing. But in fact, this is quoting now from I believe Wiki. It traces its roots to 1933. Saudi Arabia granted Standard Oil permission to search for oil back in 1950. Essentially, Saudi government started taking it away. They prompted the companies to have to sign what they call the 50-50 sharing pact. And that process of nationalization, basically taking it away from the Western companies, proceeded over that period of time, in which now they're out completely. So that expropriation of private property happens in Saudi Arabia. It happened, I think, to make Saudi Arabia in terms of taking the Western knowledge that created the oil wealth in the first place. But what about censorship? I mean, this is a big one. Ayn Rand talked a lot about how once freedom of speech goes, everything goes. And this is really what inspired our program for you here this evening on the Ayn Rand Center UK, is this almost jaw-dropping case of beyond just censorship. I mean, brutality on a sense that I cannot understand other than Saudi Arabia. A Saudi woman was given a 34-year prison sentence for using Twitter. This thankfully has made some headlines. She's a mother of 2 children, and she was originally having just the crime of using the internet to cause public unrest. Doing what? Following people, simply following on their Twitter feed. But now she was sentenced to 34 years additional, plus a 34-year travel ban. So sometimes when she's 100, she might be able to, leave the country. She was accused of basically assisting those who seek to cause public unrest and destabilize civil and national security by following their Twitter accounts. I mean, this isn't just censorship, this is authoritarianism. This was a woman who was trained in the UK. She was a dental hygienist. She was a PhD student, was educated, was Western. And this is how, forget just women, this is how ideas, independent thought, individual rights is treated in this, they keep wanting to say this modern day Saudi Arabia, and it's disgusting. And, my heart goes out to this woman, of course, her family, that she was on vacation back. I believe she was in vacationing or living in the UK, went back to Saudi Arabia to be with family, and the Saudi authorities arrested her, tried her for her tweets. She'll never be free again. And for everything people want to say about the US and the UK and Western culture is done, that doesn't happen in America. People do not come and lock you up because of your tweets. They might cancel you, they might not buy your product, but they do not put you in jail like this. And you have to call this out, I think, as objectivists, as people with a brain, how dangerous that is. And there's nothing about that resembling the first world. Hey, I want to, by the way, thank Joni for being here once again. He's a member here at the Ayn Rand Center UK on our YouTube channel. Enric just became a member, and that's like gilding the lily, because Enric is already a prolific super chatter, which is so meaningful to Razi, who keeps the ship running. Free Trade, thank you for your generous contribution. You keep the engine going here. It's spiritual ammunition. It helps us get intellectual ammunition. It helps us get Harry Binswanger to you. It helps us get Don Watkins to you. I mean, James Valiant, people who are real experts, and not to mention recording stars like Raka Ali. So thank you for that. This story is just terrible, but I don't think it's unusual. I don't think it's that unusual. This is Saudi Arabia. This is a country that is so morally corrupt to the core that there's almost not words to it. Now, people say, oh, well, prison, what's the big deal? This is what happens in prison in America. It's a story from a decade ago, but I don't think it's changed much. This is a story about a fitness program in an American prison that offered not just female prisoners weight loss, but self-esteem habits and good feeling habits. And if you're listening on Sirius XM now or on our audio feeds, you're seeing images of female prisoners basically kind of going through exercise routines. And my sense is that doesn't happen a lot in Saudi prisons. In fact, just a little bit of a Google search, and here's an article just from a recent UK headline: hidden horrors inside Saudi Arabia's nightmare black hole jails, where inmates are whipped bloody, diseases run riot, and children die. That might be a little, you'd say, hyperbole, but there's lots of these headlines about torture in Saudi prisons being regular. It's, quote, the most oppressive era they've ever had. Torture specifically of female political prisoners. I mean, you think this young woman is going to be treated with kid gloves? She's going to be eaten alive. And it happens in this completely barbaric society. And I think we need to call it out. I mean, I don't know how Saudi Arabia can be allowed in the United Nations, for what it's worth. I mean, any place where there's, I would, if I had a TV station, I would never let somebody from the government of Saudi Arabia on. It is, quoting now from Dr. Leonard Peikoff, the sanction of the victim. Don't let this evil get a voice. Don't let this evil get a seat at a table. They don't deserve it. If they put people in jail for a tweet, for following someone on Twitter, they send children to death. Quoting now from Dr. Peikoff, the sanction of the victim is the willingness of the good to suffer at the hands of the evil, to accept the role of sacrificial victim for the sin of creating values. The West is the good. And in this case, we're the only good, certainly compared to Saudi Arabia in this case. It's diabolical. So don't sanction them. Don't, I think, include them in any country that's worth anything other than scorn and disparagement. I think they earn it based on their culture. And people then say, oh, well, what do you want to do? Go to war with us, Saudi Arabia? No, we don't have to go to war with anyone. But we have to, I think, as the West, conduct ourselves with moral authority. And a very benign proposal would be not to dance with the sheiks as President Trump did, or go beg for oil like President Biden did, but to close our embassies. I'm speaking of America now. Close our embassies in Saudi Arabia. There's one in Tehran, there's 3 establishments there. Close these down. So we're not going to have an American presence in a place where people are imprisoned for a tweet, or that they treat prisoners like this, or that they beat people up, or that they steal property in this type of manner. I mean, you need to take a little bit of moral authority and call that out. That would go a long way. I think that would really go a long way. Quoting from Miss Rand now, the spread of evil is the symptom of a vacuum. Wherever evil wins, it is only by default, by the moral failure of those who evade the fact that there could be no compromise on basic principles. And as I said, would you want to have dinner with, forget even the king of Saudi Arabia, let's just say someone high up in government. And what are you going to talk about? Hey, yeah, here's things. Just, I'd love to go visit sometime. Chop Square. Tell me about that. Is it really interesting? I mean, it's disgusting. It is disgusting. Any place you have to go to and be worried about what you say is going to be met with force, unless you're, of course, shouting fire in a crowded movie theater. These are countries that are deserving only of scorn, not of sanction. And I hope the West wakes up that despite all the pretty skyscrapers, read the headlines of what actually goes on in Saudi Arabia. And as I said, what's below third world? Is it fourth? Or maybe, to me, this is fifth type world level. You don't hear this anywhere else. I don't think a lot of other individuals, I don't think other philosophers are brave enough to speak in moral philosophical terms. This is, of course, not Miss Rand speaking, but she had a lot to say on certainly the Middle East and so many of these issues. So I encourage you to read all of these resources. Find that at Ayn Rand Center UK. And more than anything, support us, become a member of what we're doing. As I said, we are Razi is our Lord and Savior. We always put that in quotes around here. Razi is producing more original, objectivist related content than anyone else in the history of the movement. And we're doing it thanks to people like Free Trade, Bonnie Bertrand, Hugh James. Thank you, Hugh. Hugh says, love seeing me on Cavuto and Kennedy. Well, Hugh, I love seeing you right here on Ayn Rand Center UK. Please share the show, become a member, support what you're doing. I mean, think about all the times they'll just say you've tipped your barista $2 or $3 or $5. Now think of the fact that your barista, whose name happens to be Razi, is behind the scenes inviting these true luminaries of objectivism to come produce original content for you that you can just enjoy on a stream on demand every day for free. So show him the love, show him the respect that you value what he's doing, and that objectivism is improving your life. I know it certainly has improved mine. And if you're listening to us from Saudi Arabia, my advice would be vote with your feet and come to, if you can, any more free place in the world. And email me privately, and I'd be happy to send you all my copies of Miss Rand's books as well, especially. So thank you for being part of what we're doing. Share the show, become a member, hit us up on Super Chat, become a subscriber, and thank you for joining us this evening and wherever you are. Wishing you best premises from all of us at the Ayn Rand Center UK. Be well.